Welcome, everybody. This is the closing event of our centennial year. It's pretty exciting. I'm Jennifer Whittam. I'm the 10th Dean of Engineering, and you can do a little math there and figure out we deans like to stay around for a while here. It's been a great year. It's been a year of celebration, reflection, looking to the future. For those of you who haven't heard about the history, we've had engineering at Stanford since the beginning of the university, 1891. We started with chemical engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and mining and metallurgy. And it was in 1925, 100 years ago, when those four departments were brought together to form a school. And those four departments are still with us today. One of them has been renamed. It's now Materials Science and Engineering rather than Metallurgy. And we have 5 more departments and many, many interdisciplinary programs. We've had events throughout the year to celebrate the centennial. They've been fantastic. We started with a panel with the 5 deans of the 10 who are still with us. That panel was moderated by Jerry Yang, who I think is here today, a great friend of the school. Our second event was on May 15th. We had a big party out on the quad. We expected 2,000 people. We got 3,000, and we didn't run out of food. We had a great showcase of projects and research. The next event was a fireside chat with Jensen Huang and John Hennessy that was actually on this very stage around the end of May. We partnered with Stanford Football and had a School of Engineering-themed football game. Nobody told me when I took the job as dean that one of my jobs would be to drive a motorized couch as my passenger. But I nailed it, and that was great. We had on reunion weekend a trivia contest on the history of the school. The alums enjoyed it, and now this is our closing event. If we look back on the 100 years of the School of Engineering, obviously the formation of Google was a shining moment. Sergey Brin, who you will soon meet, met Larry Page when he visited to think about coming to our PhD program. That was in 1995. They worked together on a project called Digital Libraries that was funded by the National Science Foundation. So if you ever have any doubt about the impact of federal funding, Google came directly from an NSF project. We all know what happened next. They developed an algorithm called Backrub, which became PageRank. And by the way, that server right there is the first server that ran the PageRank algorithm. So a bit of history right in front of you. We're going to hear more about that time shortly. But I do want to say that's only one example of the entrepreneurship that has happened across the decades and the century of Stanford engineering. Thousands of other companies have been founded by students, by faculty, by alumni. They've generated literally trillions of dollars in economic growth. And that foundation was laid by the 3rd dean of the School of Engineering, someone by the name of Fred Terman. Fred mentored William Hewlett and David Packard. He also mentored the Varian brothers. And he also helped establish the Stanford Industrial Park, which is now known as the Stanford Research Park, still going strong today. So many breakthroughs over the years in Stanford engineering, in aeronautics, electricity transmission, microwave radar, semiconductor work that really sparked Silicon Valley, cybersecurity that all of us rely on, internet transmission protocols that all of us rely on, the foundations of AI, bioelectronics, lithium-ion batteries, the list goes on, and there's surely more to come. Now, I do want to acknowledge that when we look at the work that we do, a lot of the details are really done by students. And today's event is also a class. More than half of the room here are students in the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders program at Stanford. And I just want to say to the students, you're the sequel to our history. So thank you, students, for coming. And today's conversation is also really about students. John Levin, the president, who you will meet shortly, and Sergey Brin were Stanford students just like all of you. Today, they're helping define the future of technology and the future of education. So this is really an ideal way to close our centennial. Now, I want to set the stage of the early 1990s when Sergey Brin arrived as a CS PhD student, computer science. Email was just becoming the way all of us were communicating. Entrepreneurship was just beginning to accelerate. The sixth dean of the School of Engineering, Jim Gibbons, hatched the idea for the Stanford Technology Ventures program, which hosts the class that's here today. The science and engineering quad was on drafting paper at best, maybe just in people's minds. And by the way, I arrived the same year that Sergey did. I joined as an assistant professor in 1993. There was also an undergraduate at Stanford beginning his senior year that same time, and that was John Levin. And one wonders, was he thinking he'd eventually become the president? Who knows? John was an undergraduate in math and English here. He went to get his PhD at MIT and returned as a faculty member in 2000. He was chair of the economics department, the dean of the business school, and became Stanford's 13th president in August of 2024. I want to say that John is really a wonderful champion of the School of Engineering. He's been so helpful throughout our centennial year. He deeply understands our culture and our spirit of entrepreneurship. So it is my pleasure now to bring John Levin, president of Stanford, and Sergey Brin to join our conversation.
I'm John Levin. It's great to see all of you here and to have this chance to celebrate the final event of the engineering school's centennial year. We have an extraordinary guest and fitting guest for the final event of the centennial with Sergey Brin, who really needs very little introduction. But I thought I might just start, before we get into questions with Sergey, to roll the clock back to, as Jennifer just did. She gave such a wonderful sweeping history of the school, but to roll the clock back to that particular moment in the 1990s when Sergey came to Stanford in 1993 as a PhD student. Jennifer was a new faculty member. I was a Stanford undergraduate at that time. I was a senior in the fall of 1993. And some years ago, a reporter for the New York Times wrote an article about my Stanford graduating class, which was the class of 94. And the gist of the article was, I hope that's better. The gist of the article was that it was the most fortunate college graduating class of all time, because we graduated at a moment that was on the cusp of the internet and technology taking off, and we were right in the middle of it in Silicon Valley. And the reporter called me when they were writing that article, it was about 10 years ago, and said, I wanted to talk to you about this. At the time, I was a faculty member at Stanford, and she said, you're the first person that I'm calling about this article. And I said, look, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. It's true I was at Stanford in the early 90s. I was in the class of 1994, but I was clueless at the time. And in fact, I left Stanford in 1994, and I went to be a graduate student at Oxford in England, a country where they had forgotten the technology for the ice cube. And by the time I made it back to Stanford, which was a few years later in 2000, things had already taken off. So I really can't help you. And she said, well, don't worry about that. I like to start these articles by talking to people on the periphery, and then I work my way in. So if I was on the periphery, there were a few people who were at the absolute core of the internet revolution, and there's no one who was more at the center than Sergey Brin, who did see the potential and the future of where technology could go, and did something extraordinary and world-changing of the kind that we hope many people, has been done many times from the engineering school, and we hope will happen many times in the school's next century. So, Sergey, thank you for being here to be part of this celebration of the school.
Okay, you guys are flattering me way too much. I think there was a huge amount of luck there, but anyway, thank you for hosting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's go back to that time and take us back to your graduate student at Stanford. Tell us a little bit what it was like to be at the engineering school and how it helped to shape you and open up the opportunity to create Google.
in hindsight, maybe I didn't appreciate it at the time, but it was a very creative and free time, I would say. We started I started my PhD program in Margaret Jacks Hall, so on the main quad actually. And this old kind of building with, creaky little rooms and doors. I learned how to pick locks there, thanks to the MIT guide to lock picking. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, how much freedom I was given in hindsight, because I could spend my time. Initially, I was trying to reverse shredders, like you shred your documents and then scan it and put it back together. I never fully got that working, actually, but I don't know. Nobody ever told me not to do that. I had a couple advisors over the years. Hector, I'm sorry, he's passed away, but what a sweetheart. He's what a nice guy. And then Jeff Ullman, and they, I don't know. I guess they would periodically ask me what I was doing. They didn't really put many limits. When we moved to the new building, the Gates Building of Computer Science, I have to say, it was a little bit naughty back then. So I knew my lock-picking days were over because you had these electronic keys with the little, infrared things. Do you still have those? Or did they change them out? Still?
Still there.
Okay, so they were, the locks are not actually networked, so it actually trusts the key to tell it if it can open the lock. Or at least back then they weren't networked, and I doubt they've changed since. But nevertheless, they were electronic and complicated. So just when we were moving into the building, there was a scaffolding outside. They were still finishing some stuff. But all the doors, all the offices, they were locked with these electronic locks that I couldn't pick, except the balcony lock to the room that had the computer that would stamp out the keys. So I climbed out. I know the statute of limitations is passed, I hope, so I can tell the story. I climbed out, from my office onto the scaffolding. I had to do this. I knew they were going to take the scaffolding down, in the next week.
Weren't we on the 4th floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was like a real, scaffolding with all the, I don't know, it seemed to say, I was a kid. That was the judgment I had. So anyway, I climbed over to the balcony, picked that one was a physical lock, probably still is. Got into the computer there. I think I made a copy of all the software on the computer, made myself a master key, and then erased the copy. And then for a while, the master key worked for kind of everything. But
And I thought all you were doing was rollerblading up and down the hallways, which you were also doing. But yeah, okay.
The scaffolding I didn't try with skates on. That would have been too much.
Your career could have gone in so many different directions, given the education you were getting at the engineering school. But it didn't go in the lock picking and career as a CIA agent or something didn't fully materialize. Tell us about how it did materialize.
I think we worked on the ideas behind Google for a number of years, starting probably in '95. And kudos to Larry to really focusing on the link structure of the web. But it was at the time the web was the new thing, and everybody would do. It was so easy to create some new idea. I think my first money-making idea was this pizza ordering. It seemed crazy at the time that you could order food online. Nowadays, we take it for granted. And as a joke, I put a Coke ad at the top. I thought it was so funny there'd be internet ads. But obviously, turned out to be not that funny. Anyway, it failed quite profoundly because the way it worked is you'd put in your order to the website, and then, pizza places were not online, generally speaking, but I had this idea they had fax machines. So it would automatically send them a fax with the order. But then I realized they don't actually check their faxes very often, and it flopped from there. So that didn't particularly pan out. But it was, at the time, like, I guess all of us probably in the computer science department, like, understood how the internet worked pretty well, how, web servers worked. Like, you could whip one of these out really quickly. So everybody was just trying stuff on the web. It was just a very creative period. Anyway, so Larry was focused on the link structure. I was working on data mining at the time. And we joined forces, and, soon enough, we found we had something that was pretty useful for search. But we spent a while just experimenting with it at Stanford and, like, thinking to make an academic project or not. We tried to, license it to various internet companies. One time, we had pitched it to Excite, and Vinod Khosla, to his credit, thought, hey, this is great, you guys should buy this. But Excite wasn't very interested. But we had an email back and forth with Vinod, and we sent a note and said, okay, we'll license you the technology for $1.6 million. And we got a reply like 15 minutes later saying, that's a lot of moolah, but okay. And we're like excited. To graduate students, that was a lot of money. And then our friend Scott, at the time there were four of us working on it. Scott and Alan were the other two. They went off to start their own companies. Anyway, Scott comes in laughing hysterically, and it turns out he had faked the reply. Because back then you couldn't send an email from anybody. So yeah, that deal didn't come to pass, obviously. But eventually Larry and I just decided that, hey, to scale this up, it would be really good to, get actual money. And eventually we found some angels, which was very easy. And, my advisor, Jeff, because for me, I was leaving a PhD program. My parents were disappointed. But he was like, well, why don't you just give it a try? And if it doesn't work out, you come back. So I'm still on leave of absence, technically. Might still come back. We'll see how it goes.
I want to come back to that later to see if you might want to think about coming back to get your degree. But I love that part of the story, it's interesting to think about in the context of today, that entrepreneurship was sort of the last option to explore after you went out and tried to license and so forth. You actually probably contributed a lot to changing that in some ways.
I don't know. I mean, our journey was its own particular one. I mean, both Scott and Alan went off to run their own companies. That was part of the reason they left. Maybe they were impatient with us trying to take it out, but it wasn't like, at the time, a lot of people were starting companies, quite honestly. And like I said, Alan was kind of involved already with this weather company, I guess now known as Weather Underground. And I think it got bought by, I can't remember, weather.com or one of the other ones in recent years. And Scott had this company that was archiving mailing lists, and it was e-groups, and eventually got bought by Yahoo and so forth. But it was pretty common. But yeah, I don't know, we probably took longer to make that kind of decision than a lot of other people would have.
So from that start, I mean, you look back now, of course, and Google's a $4 trillion company, and you process 10 million searches every minute, and are in a huge number of, just the enormous number of different products and so forth. At the time that you and Larry went to start the company, none of that was obvious, at least to most people. That's why it wasn't licensed and so forth. And you obviously made a lot of good decisions over the years to get from where you started to where the company ended up. Are there things that you did right at the beginning when you were creating Google that you look back and you think that was really important that we did that right from the start of the company?
I mean, I think early on, well, Larry was always very ambitious. He still is. In fact, there's almost no plan you can suggest to him that he won't say, like, oh, that's not ambitious enough. You need, not just the solar system, the galaxy, So I think that's a little bit of sort of his passion. And so, yeah, we did have fairly early on the, very ambitious mission statement, to organize all the world's information and so forth. And, I think that was a good kind of philosophy to start a company on. And also, we did start a fairly academic, I guess, minded company. I mean, we both came out of the PhD program. Like a lot of the startups at the time were kind of out of college. I just do think that sort of shifts how you think about things a little bit. And, there are many phenomenal companies, just to be clear, that have come out of college. But the investment in sort of foundational R&D and so forth, I do think was a part of the culture quite early on.
You hired a lot of PhDs as well, so it wasn't just the two of you.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I remember Urs Hosley, who was one of our earliest guys. I knew him because I was on the Stanford, the professor search committee. Like I'd already interviewed him. He got turned down for the Stanford job for, I don't know, whatever. It's complicated. You got a lot of good candidates. But like the moment he sent me a note, I was like, can you start tomorrow? I mean, because I already knew him and all of his qualifications.
You built probably, I think there's a good argument that Google's been the most innovative company of the last 25 years in the whole world. And I mean, that by both in terms of product innovation, if you look, and a lot of great decisions went in there, like building out video with YouTube and advertising with DoubleClick and Waymo and technical innovation, going back to the beginning, but even now with chips and so forth. I'm curious about how it's really hard for large companies to stay hugely innovative. Everyone has struggled with that, and you've managed to do it. And many people, attribute you personally with having a big impact there. How do you think about fostering a culture of innovation and your role in it?
Well, okay, thank you. You keep flattering me. I think that, well, first of all, we've definitely flopped on a bunch of things. We don't need to get into all of them right now. But we've had a long list of failures at the same time. So, part of it is just trying. I think that because of the kind of academic roots, maybe we were more inclined to try hard things. And I think kind of coming into this last decade or so, especially, the hard things have become more and more valuable. I guess I'm going to, if you look at AI, which is obviously a huge trend, but like just, the amount of computing that has to go into that, the amount of kind of deep math that has to go into that, those are all, technically deep and challenging problems. And I guess it's just kind of a twist of fate that turns out to be important at this stage in the world. I mean, there was a while where, you could there was like pets.com, you remember, you can put anything on .com. It wasn't really that technically deep. You need a marginal understanding of the web, and you can do whatever .com. Fortunately, we were doing search, which did require some deeper technical skills. But the technical sophistication level has only gone up. And in fact, well, now, the people we hire are just, well, they're much more qualified than I am, or I was at the time. I was kind of a mathy computer science major because I had, like, during college, I did both math and computer science, which was somewhat unusual in my class. But nowadays, as we like hire people out of Stanford and all the other top programs, like these people are pretty sharp mathematically and computer science wise. And a bunch of them are physicists because physicists kind of have to do the hard math. And a lot of the stuff they do is like very computationally limited. So they need to kind of have some degree of the computation skills. So I just think somehow it has happened to be the case that some of the deep hard tech has become increasingly important. And I think we just kind of lucked out on having set the bit early on in that direction.
That's an interesting observation that the technical problems have come to the fore again as a competitive advantage for companies and in AI. So let's talk about AI for a minute. I mean, everyone's thinking about it. You're back at Google working on it. You guys are at the forefront in a whole bunch of ways, and it's incredibly competitive. I mean, the amount of capital that's going into AI infrastructure is hundreds of billions of dollars, even at the level of individual companies. It's really extraordinary. How are you seeing the landscape right now for what's going on in AI?
Okay, let me think how to answer that without just pounding my own chest. I mean, yes, it's a huge amount of investment for sure. I guess I would say in some ways, we for sure messed up in that we underinvested and sort of didn't take it as seriously as we should have, say, 8 years ago when we published the Transformer paper. We actually didn't take it all that seriously and didn't necessarily invest in scaling the compute. And also we were too scared to bring it to people because chatbots say dumb things. OpenAI ran with it, which good for them. It was a super smart insight. And it was also our people like Ilya who went there to do that. But I do think we still have benefited from that long history. So we had a lot of the research and development of neural networks, kind of going back to Google Brain. That was also kind of lucky. It wasn't, it wasn't luck that we hired Jeff Dean. I mean, we were lucky to get him, but we were in this sort of mindset that deep technical things mattered. And so we hired him. We hired a lot of people from DEC, honestly, because they had the top research labs at the time. But he was passionate about neural networks. And it stemmed, I think, from actually his college experiment. I don't know. He was like, whatever, curing third world disease and figuring out neural networks when he was like 16. He's done crazy things. But he was passionate about it. He built up a whole effort. Actually, in my division at the time, in Google X, we had him. But I was like, okay, Jeff, you do whatever you want. He's like, oh, we can tell cats from dogs. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But you also trust your technical people, and soon enough they were developing all these algorithms, these neural nets that were, doing some of our search, and then Noam came up with a transformer, and we were able to do more and more. But yeah, I mean, we had the underpinnings, we had the R&D. We did underinvest for a number of years and didn't take it as seriously as we should have. But we also, at the time, we had developed the chips for it. Like the TPUs go back, 12 years or something like that. Initially, we were using GPUs. We're probably also among the earliest to use GPUs. And then we used FPGAs. And then we tried to develop our own chips, which have now evolved through a bazillion generations. So I guess it was that the trust into going after the deep tech, getting the more computation out, developing the algorithms. And in parallel, we were big investors in compute for a long time. So we've had the data centers for a long, long time, kind of on a scale that I don't think, well, Amazon AWS also does have very sizable data centers, but very few have, that scale of data center, have their own semiconductors, have, the deep learning algorithms and so forth, to kind of all the components of the stack to be able to perform at the forefront of modern AI.
How are you thinking about, the technology keeps getting better every year. There's a set of people who, and there's a lot of different visions for what artificial intelligence is going to look like. Like, are AI is really going to be able to do everything humans can do, at least in front of a computer, and maybe more broadly, what will that world look like? Do you have a view on that, on where the technology is going?
It is absolutely amazing, just the rate of innovation. And it's hugely competitive now, obviously, as all of you see, between the top US companies, the top Chinese companies. And it's, if you skip the news in AI for a month, you're like way behind, So where is it going to go? I think we just don't know. Is there a ceiling to intelligence? I guess in addition to the question that you raised, can it do anything a person can do? There's the question, what things can it do that a person cannot do?
Yeah.
That's sort of a super intelligence question.
Yeah.
And I think that's just not known. How smart can a thing be? We've had however many hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, and I don't know, whatever, millions of primate, but that's a pretty slow process compared to what's going on with AI.
Do you think we're ready for the speed at which the technology is advancing?
Are we ready for the speed the technology is advancing? Look, so far I think people are getting, definitely great use out of technology. I think even though there are doom and gloom forecasts here and there, everybody's pretty well empowered. And the AIs, truth be told, are periodically dumb enough that you're always supervising them anyway. But occasionally they're brilliant and give you a great idea. And occasionally, especially as a non-expert, whatever, if I want to figure out how to create a new AI chip, I guess I could talk to our expert designers and stuff. But as a base case, I can whip out my phone, I can talk to an AI about it. It'll probably give me a 80-90% decent sort of overview and understand it. Or whatever, my health questions or whatnot. I do think it makes individuals very empowered because generally speaking, you don't have experts in XYZ all around you all the time. And I think that empowerment can create a lot of potential, whether it's, career or enterprise or health or living well. So look, I don't think I have all the answers. I just do think it has a huge potential to improve individual capability.
Yeah, that's certainly the positive vision. It's that it could be an incredible augmenter of human capability. It's great that you're thinking about it that way. Let me ask a question, I think, which is always asked in the entrepreneurial thought leaders class, but is maybe particularly salient with the discussion of AI, because one of the things I think every student at Stanford and probably every college-age student in the country is thinking about is how will this technology affect their careers and their job opportunities and what they might go on to do. I'm curious if you have any advice for the students about what they ought to be studying or what they ought to be thinking about as they look at the job market in the future.
I think it's super hard to predict exactly what will happen. I think, if we look at from the advent of the web to cell phones and so forth, those have transformed our society profoundly, have transformed the kinds of jobs and careers and studies people do for sure. And AI will 100% change that. But I think it's very hard right now in a rapidly shifting landscape to say exactly what. And also the AI we have today is very different from the AI that we had 5 years ago or the AI we are going to have in 5 years. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough to really forecast. I mean, I would for sure use AI to your benefit. There are just so many things that you can do. Yeah, I mean, just myself as an individual, like I just, whether it's, choosing a gift for my friends or family or brainstorming new ideas for products or what have you, or for art or something like that. Like I just turn to AI all the time now, and it doesn't do it for me because I always, I typically will ask, give me 5 ideas, blah, blah, blah. And, probably 3 of them are going to be junk in some way that I'll just be able to tell. But 2 will have some grain of brilliance, and, or possibly put it in perspective for me or something like that, that I'll be able to refine, think through my ideas.
Let me jump in with a really concrete question. So we have about 250 students out there. A lot of them are undergraduates. A great number of them have not selected their major yet because we give them a lot of flexibility here at Stanford for the undergraduates as well. A few years ago, we could predict that a large number would choose computer science as their major. Are you recommending they continue to pick computer science as their major? And they're listening closely.
I mean, I chose computer science because I had a passion for it. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I guess you could say I was also lucky because that was also such a transformative field. I wouldn't not choose computer science just because AI can be decent at coding nowadays. AI is pretty decent at a lot of things. Coding just happens to have a lot of market value, which is why a lot of people pursue it. And furthermore, better coding makes for better AI. So a lot of the companies like our own that work on it care a lot about it. Like we use it a lot for our own coding, and even for our algorithmic ideas and so forth. But that's because it's such an important thing. So I guess I wouldn't go off and switch to comparative literature because you think the AI is good at coding. The AI is probably even better at comparative literature, just to be perfectly honest. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't mean to disrespect comparative literature majors, but just when the AI writes the code, and just be honest, sometimes doesn't work, it'll make a mistake that's pretty significant. Getting a sentence wrong in your essay about comparative literature isn't going to really have that consequence. So it's honestly easier for AI to do some of the, creative things.
I think it's a very interesting observation about the technology, because I think, one inclination to say about AI is it's going to be really good at solving these technical problems, but it won't necessarily do the things we associate with humans, like being empathetic in a conversation. And if you ask one of these AI engines to, say, simulate a conversation, it's actually pretty good at doing a lot of sort of giving you the structure for a complicated conversation. So I think that actually, I like that you're pointing to that uncertainty. One more question that I want to open up to the audience so that we give people a chance to ask questions. So this is the 100th anniversary of the School of Engineering. If you were Jennifer and had to launch the school's second century, what would you be thinking about for the second century of the School of Engineering?
Wow. Okay, that's a big responsibility to kind of plan. First.
It is a
The
big
dean job will come
It is a
open.
big responsibility.
I mean, I guess I just would rethink what it means to have a university. I mean, I know that sounds kind of annoying. That's the kind of thing Larry would say, and I would be really annoyed with him. But, you know, I mean, we have this geographically concentrated thing, and there's like the buildings and the fancy lecture halls. That really annoying blinking light. Sorry, I can't help it. You guys need to fix your. But realistically now, you know, information spreads very quickly, and many of the universities have, you know, obviously, whatever, gone online, including Stanford, but you know, MIT with the open courseware early on, and all these startups that have gone this way, whatever, Coursera, Udacity, you name it. So the teaching is sort of getting spread, and anybody can go online now and learn about it. You know, you can talk to an AI or take one of these classes and watch the YouTube videos. So I guess, what does it mean to have a university? Are you trying to maximize the impact? In that case, you know, probably just limiting it geographically is not going to be so effective. To be fair, I guess, you know, in the Bay Area is kind of a special place. But, yeah, I mean, I know I'm kind of rambling here and thinking through, but, yeah, I don't know that for the coming century that, you know, the idea of School of Engineering and university is going to mean the same thing as it used to. I mean, people move around, work remotely, collaborate across. It's a little bit at odds because we're trying to get people actually into the office, and I think they do work better in person together. But that's at a certain particular scale. Like at some level, if you have 100 people together over there, it's like kind of fine. They don't have to be at the same place as these other 100 people. And increasingly, I do see sort of individuals kind of who create new things, sort of regardless of degree. I mean, in as much as we've hired a lot of academic stars, we've hired tons of people who don't have bachelor's degrees or anything like that, and they just figure things out, you know, on their own in some weird corner. I don't know. I think it's a really hard question. Yeah, I guess I don't feel like I'm gonna magically deliver you like the new recipe, but I just don't think this format is likely to be the one for the next 100 years.
You took that in a deeper direction than I was.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was great. Actually, it was a bit deeper.
Sounded more presidential than dean-like. I think he's talking to you.
I agree. It applies to the whole university.
You actually surfaced the most fundamental questions about the university, which is that the part of the university is about the creation and transmission of knowledge. That's the fundamental mission. Those can be done in different ways as technology advances. And then there's a question about the model of having kind of a density of talent all in one place bumping into each other, sort of, which of course was what led to you creating Google and has led to a lot of great things. And will there be substitutes for that kind of ecosystem that gets created on a university campus, or how fundamental is that, and will it continue to be? So I actually thought that was, I appreciate that you surfaced such a deep question in this session. All right, I want to make sure we give some questions for other folks out in the audience. So Jennifer, I'm going to turn to you to take some questions from the folks out here.
Yes, so the students in the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders class submitted questions in advance, and a number of those were selected. And so with the time we have left, we're going to have a few questions from our students. I think the first one is over here.
Dean Widow, President Levin, and Sergey Brin, thank you for your time. My name is Rashad Barve from Kansas City, studying MS&E and IR. And my first question goes out to Sergey. It actually just touches on what we were discussing. Google largely grew out of the academic work you authored on PageRank. With industry now driving so much of today's innovation, do you still feel that the academia to industry pipeline is crucial? And if so, how might you strengthen it?
Wow, that's a great question. Is the academia to industry pipeline crucial? Yeah, I'm going to give you an I don't know on that because I guess, when I was a grad student, the sort of time from some new idea to it being maybe commercially valuable was many decades. If that compresses, then it no longer makes as much sense to do that. I mean, in academia, you have freedom to think about it for a while. You apply for grants, you do this and that, and you can kind of spend a couple decades thinking about it, and then it percolates, and then, eventually maybe there's some big company or your startup kind of pursues it. The question is, does that make sense if that timeline shrinks a lot? I think there are certain things that for sure make sense, and I definitely, even within AI, periodically keep up with the Stanford research and other universities. Occasionally we hire those folks and collaborate with them and whatnot. But I guess I don't know that they needed to have that sort of period of time that they were trying, some new attention thing, let's say. And they spent a couple years experimenting, and then, they took it to industry in one form or another. I mean, obviously industry is also doing all those things. So probably not a huge argument for that. Radical sort of new architectures and things, maybe, but it's sort of, the time that industry will scale it will be much faster. I guess, quantum computing comes to mind. There was sort of first brainstormed, I don't know when did Feynman, like in the 80s or something, kind of postulate this idea of quantum computing. And now there are a bunch of companies that are included. They're sort of doing it. There are also university labs that try like new ways to do it. That's kind of like on the fence, maybe. I guess I would say if you have some completely new idea, like you're not doing superconducting qubits like we are, or the trapped ions like a bunch of startups are, but you have some new way, maybe you need to let it marinate in university for some number of years. Those things are kind of hard. It could make sense. But then at some point, if you decide it's really compelling, you're probably going to go ahead and take it commercial in one way or another. Yeah, I don't know. I want to give you a clear-cut answer because, the top companies now do invest in much more fundamental research. And I think it's sort of with AI starting to pay off that, those investments are paying off. So I guess it would shift the proportion of endeavors that you would do. But I do think there are still some things that do take, like the decade of kind of more pure research, that maybe companies are going to be more reluctant to pursue because that's just too long a time to market.
All right, next question I think is over here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arnav, and I'm a freshman studying computer science and math. My question is for Sergey Brin. As AI accelerates at this unprecedented rate, what mindset should young, aspiring entrepreneurs like myself adopt to avoid repeating earlier mistakes?
Oh, what mindset should you adopt to avoid repeating earlier mistakes? Yeah, when you have like your cool new wearable device idea, really fully bake it before you have a cool stunt involving skydiving and airships. That's one tip I would give you. No, I like the sort of what we were doing back in the day for Google Glass. It's like, an example of prior mistakes. But I think I just tried to commercialize it too quickly before, we could make it more, as cost effectively as we needed to and as polished as we needed to from consumer standpoint and so forth. I sort of, jumped the gun. And I thought, oh, I'm the next Steve Jobs. I can make this thing. Ta-da. That's probably one. I guess, if I encapsulate it, everybody thinks they're the next Steve Jobs. I've definitely made that mistake. But, he was a pretty unique kind of guy. So, I guess I would say, make sure you've baked your idea long enough and developed it sort of long enough to a far enough point before there's sort of a treadmill you get onto where your sort of outside expectations increase, the expenses increase, and you're sort of then you kind of have to deliver by a certain time, and you might not have that. You might not be able to do everything you need to do in that amount of time. You kind of get this snowball, I guess, of expectations that happens, and you don't give yourself all the time that you need to process them. That's the mistake I would have tried to avoid.
All right, I think we're going to go over to this side.
Hi, thank you for the talk. This question is, so my name is Ishan Barkataki. I'm an undergraduate freshman at Stanford University. This question is for Sergey Brin and Jennifer. So we see a lot of AI companies improving large language models via scaling data and scaling compute. My question is, once we do run out of data and once we do run out of compute, what do you think will be the next direction? Would it be in newer architecture, an alternative to transformers? Or would it be a better learning method, something better than like supervised learning or RL that we use to train these large language models? Or is it a completely different direction that you have thought of before? Thank you.
I can take it from my point of view. I mean, all of the things that you listed, I would say, have already been bigger factors than scaling compute or scaling data. I think that's sort of like people notice the scaling because you're like building data centers and buying chips and like, there were all the publications from OpenAI and Anthropic about like different kinds of scaling laws. So I think that attracts a lot of attention. But I think if you carefully line things up, you'll see that actually the algorithmic progress has outpaced even the scaling over the last decade or something. At some point, actually, a while ago, while I was in grad school, I think I saw this kind of plot for like the n-body problem, like if you have gravitation, they're all flying around. And it actually, there's been huge, Moore's law increase in compute since people started worrying about that in the 50s to, I don't know, by the time I read about in the 90s. But actually the algorithms to do the n-body problem far outpaced that compute scale up. So I think you're going to find that, companies like ours are never going to turn down being at the frontier of compute. But that's just sort of that's the dessert after, your main course and the veggies of actually having done your algorithmic work.
I guess I'll jump in and say that in terms of running out of compute or running out of data, or specifically running out of compute, we're very familiar with that here already. It's actually an issue that it's difficult for a university to have the type of compute that the companies have. We don't even come close. But that does lead us to do quite a bit of innovative work in what happens when you have less compute and how to make more of less. So we do a lot of that work here already. Next question, I think also on this side.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Savorzy. I'm a second-year graduate student in chemical engineering. My question is to all the speakers. Which emerging technology do you think is seriously being underestimated in terms of its long-term impact? Thank you.
Whew. Okay, what emergent technology is being seriously underestimated? Wow. Okay, I obviously can't say AI because it's hard to argue. Well, it could be underestimated.
It could be underestimated.
It could be underestimated, but probably not emergent at this point. We couldn't use that one. I mean, a lot of people do wonder about quantum computing, what it will bring. It's probably not what I would hang my hat on to answer that question, although I'm definitely support sort of our efforts in quantum computing and so forth. But there are many unknowns. I mean, technically speaking, we don't even know if P is not equal to NP. Like on the computation front, there are just so many unanswered questions. And the quantum algorithms are specific for very particular structured problems. That said, I'm a big proponent. But it's hard to put my finger on that. I mean, perhaps the applications of both AI and for that matter, quantum computing to materials science, because what could we do with different kinds of materials that are better in a whole host of ways? I mean, kind of the sky's the limit.
I was thinking of materials as well, actually, but partly because a lot of the underestimated is sort of interesting. There's so much attention right now on like what are the opportunities for technological innovation. So many technologies that aren't there yet, like fusion energy or quantum, they probably, it'd be hard to say that people are missing them and not paying any attention to them right now, and AI, but I think materials would be, in my mind, would be one of them, and probably some of the opportunities in biology and health, of which there are many in molecular science. That's probably getting less attention than AI right now, but there's also a huge revolution in molecular science.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I kind of watched the spotlight move around, and the spotlight is very large on AI right now, but it was shining on biology, and it shouldn't stop shining on it. There's all kinds of things going on in synthetic biology, very exciting things. So I think we need to broaden that spotlight a little bit. Okay, over here.
Hi, my name is Dromi, and I'm a student coming from Singapore. My question today is for Sergey, and it's a bit more personal. So we all grew up having limiting beliefs, and I was curious of what limiting beliefs or deeply held beliefs you had while building Google that you had to change, and how did that affect your decision making? Thank you.
Limiting beliefs. Yeah, I guess like I had a very, like my life expanded pretty dramatically at a bunch of stages. Like I was born in Moscow in the Soviet Union, and it's very different, very poor. Well, everybody was very poor. And I lived in a little 400 square foot apartment with my parents and my grandmother, and I had to walk up 5 flights of stairs. I don't know, didn't really think about the world outside. I guess I was lucky that my father kind of got a hint of the world outside. He, I guess, went to some conference in Poland where they told him what the Western world was like, and he decided to move us, which was very controversial at the time in the family. But eventually got to the US, and we're still, very poor and had to make our way out of having nothing. At the time I had to learn a new language, I had to make all new friends. So it was sort of challenging transition, but awakening. And I think when I came to grad school at Stanford, it was sort of a similar like now I had sort of all this freedom in the way the professors entrusted me, and just something about California that was very freeing and liberating in thought, given the tradition of the state. One that we're a little bit getting away from in California, if I'm being honest, but anyway, I'm not going to complain about that. But I guess it's this experience. I guess I'm answering a question backwards, not like really limiting belief. I guess I had the experience of expanding my world in ways that seemed very painful at the times, but later paid off just because of my personal history. And I guess, those challenging transitions can pay off.
Right. Next question.
Hello. Thank you to all of you for being here. My name is Lubaba. I'm a second-year master's student in management science and engineering, originally from Casablanca, Morocco. My question is also for you, Sergey. It's also more on the personal side. So you've achieved success at a scale most people never experience. Looking at your life now, what is your definition of a good life? What does it mean to you beyond all these accomplishments? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. What is the definition of a good life? Well, I guess it's being able to enjoy your life, whatever you build. I'd like to have family, have one of my kiddos here, my girlfriend is here. I feel grateful to be able to spend quality time with them. I do feel quite grateful to be able to be intellectually challenged sort of at this stage. I actually retired like a month before COVID hit. And it was like the worst decision. I had this vision that I was going to sit in cafes and study physics, which was my passion at the time. Yeah, that didn't work because there were no more cafes. Yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of stewing and kind of felt myself spiraling, kind of not being sharp. And then I was like, I got to get back to the office, which at the time was closed. But, after a number of months, we started to have some folks going to the office, and I started to do that occasionally. And then started spending more and more time on what later became called Gemini, which is super exciting. And to be able to have that technical, creative outlet, I think that's very rewarding, as opposed to if I'd stayed retired. I think that would have been a big mistake.
All right, I think we have time for one or two more, I believe, over on this side.
Hello, thank you guys all so much for being here. My name is Stanley Liu. I'm a freshman planning on studying management science and engineering. And a question for all three of you. So for some context, before arriving here, I was absolutely terrified because everyone here is super talented. I'm like, what is going on? I have no clue why I'm here, and everyone just seems way too smart for me. But after getting to know people, I realized they're all just really relatable and normal people. So for all three of you, you guys are viewed as some of the best leaders, innovators in the world. But if there's one thing you'd like to share that is reassuringly relatable and human about yourself, what would that be? Yeah.
You want to start, Sergey?
Okay, I'm going to share it, and then I'm going to try to undo it. But okay, I realize that sometimes I'm embarrassed to ask things I don't know, but I will go ahead. Wait, what is management science and engineering? Is it like a Dilbert kind of I'm going to manage? How does that work?
It's a class.
It's a class.
It's a major.
Wait, this
It's
class?
a department.
Class of management science.
Is that this class? I guess I should have read the details more. It's called management science and it's a department.
It's a department, yes.
But what do you study? Like, what are the classes?
So management science and engineering, I'm going to just say they just had their 25th anniversary, but they were the merger of 3 departments: industrial engineering, operations research, and engineering economics systems. So I think that describes, sort of gives you a little triangle there of what they do. So some universities will have an industrial engineering or operations research. We have this all bundled together here in management science and engineering, which is the department that sponsors the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders Seminar, which is what we are conducting right now.
All right. Well, I guess I didn't really know that, so that's my embarrassing truth. But I'm glad I asked.
What makes me relatable is that I can explain things to Sergey Brin. Pay attention to them. I'll let you off the hook, John, and we'll go to our last question. Do we have one more question? I think we do. Yeah.
We can ask one more. Hi, my name's Ina. I'm actually the course assistant for the class. So thank you for being here. And it's a great thing that we can have this last class. I'm going to ask you something that we ask a lot of our speakers usually, is to give a recommendation to the students as to what do you do with your time to stay on top of things. And you just said you really like staying sharp and being on top of what's happening in AI and whatnot. So what books do you read? What podcasts do you listen to in your car?
Okay, I'm going to try to do this without advertising or so. Well, okay, so the thing I like to do, but you shouldn't do it now because we have like a way better version coming. But I do talk to Gemini live in the car often, and I ask. But the publicly available version right now is not our good version, so like you shouldn't do it today. But give me a few weeks to actually ship what I have access to, because we have like an ancient model behind it in the publicly released version right now. It's a little embarrassing. But I do like ask it like, you know, whatever, I want to develop a data center, you know, whatever. I need how many hundreds of megawatts of this kind of power, that kind of power, how much it's going to cost. And I just talk to it about stuff on my drive. Okay, that does seem kind of self-advertising with Gemini. I mean, I do periodically listen to a whole bunch of podcasts. I like the All In guys are actually one of my favorites. And they're great hosts. We just visited Ben Shapiro, another podcaster down in, we were in Florida, got to see his studio. I mean, a bunch of these podcasters are actually pretty fun to meet in person. But yeah, I guess, okay, that's not how you're going to learn about it. You're going to, but I do just listen to them and see what's up. But I do prefer to have an interactive discussion on my drive. So that's why I talk to the AI, as embarrassing as that sounds.
Okay.
That's sort of a glimpse of the future, I think, actually. So that's a good way to end. We'll probably all be doing it soon.
Might be, yes. So thank you, John. Thank you, Sergey. I also wanted to thank Emily Ma. Emily is a Stanford adjunct lecturer. Emily is a co-instructor of the course. She's also a Google employee, and she saw the potential for this event and partnered with us, so thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, for celebrating the School of Engineering's 100th year. This was a perfect way to close out our first century, and let's see what happens next. So thank you.
Thank you.